And welcome back to our coverage here at GCHS-TV of the 2019 election, I say. Let's not go that far back.
2009.
It's been a long, long day, my friend.
Yes.
James Collier joined now with the department chair for the history department here at Greenville County High School, Eric Booz. First off, Mr. Booz, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We greatly appreciate all the insight that you've brought, as well as with Mr. Smith. But it was one of the things when I started thinking about this project and being able to put this together for GCHS-TV, the first two minds that came to mind were you and Mr. Smith, with your history, knowledge, and your plethora of bringing to us. But we greatly appreciate everything that you guys have helped us out with this evening.
Oh, you're welcome. We're glad to do it, and this is you the guys who love this stuff, who love the numbers, love the details.
Well, it's funny you talk about that. So today, it was funny you pointed out. So, this is the nerd stuff, as you talk about. So my son and I, who is our executive producer for this broadcast this evening, Nicholas Collier, who's back in the control room doing a fabulous job. But I was looking at the stream today, and there was a place there it said nerd guy. I click on that. That's my numbers, okay? Being a math guy, that's me, okay? The history stuff, I knew I need to go get help. I love history. I'm not like this. But when we look at where we are, 97% that have reported, it's about a 10,000 vote lead for Andy Beshear. And when we throw the map up, our latest map that we currently have, it's one of those things that those counties that still have not called, that have made a declaration of, yes, they're in. We seriously, as we were talking in the break, we just don't think there's enough votes out there to make that push forward for Governor Bevin to overtake Andy Beshear.
No, I don't think so. And one of those counties has recently kind of come in the same region of the counties that we're questioning. So there's just like three counties that, Caldwell, Grayson, and then you've got over on the far side, Ballard County. But if you go just south of Grayson County and you look at Warren County, fairly populated county for a urban center. You had 18,000 votes going for Andy Beshear, 17,000 votes going for Matt Bevin. If it stays like that in the rest of Western Kentucky, that's Andy Beshear's race because he's up 10,000. So it's really tough to see where Bevin can pick up, say, maybe 20,000 votes and do that leapfrog and keep kind of Andy back. And a little bit of Louisville has to come in, and chances are that's just going to pad on Beshear. So right now it looks like Beshear kind of weathered the storm kind of in the middle of the broadcast where Bevin was surging, staying up 20, 30,000 votes, the eastern part of the state coming in strong. And then here we have Beshear kind of weathering all of that, relying heavily on Jefferson County as we knew he would, and then picking up some places just enough around the state to make the big difference for him.
That was something that Mr. Smith and I discussed at the beginning of the broadcast. We felt there were four key areas throughout the state that if one of the candidates could control, they really had the pulse of this election. Lexington, Georgetown area, the Fayette County, Scott County area, Northern Kentucky, Louisville, and then, of course, Paducah. And as we've seen so far, three of those four have been controlled by Andy Beshear.
Absolutely. And the big one that Bevin, when I was doing my research for this and getting ready, I knew that there is a population center that Republicans can control in Kentucky, and that was Northern Kentucky. That gets around Newport, Covington, you're south of Cincinnati, Boone County, Kenton County, Campbell County. We hit on them earlier. And the fact that Bevin was not carrying those counties, when I saw that, I thought, okay, this is it. If he doesn't have a strong showing in these counties, this could be the point that if he loses, you look at and say, he underperformed here, those people didn't show up for him, or they turned on him, and he lost the election. He needed those people. Those numbers were not there for him. And I think we're seeing kind of the end result of that right now. It's staying, even as numbers are coming in, around 10,000. Beshear still keeping that 10,000 vote pad, and he's got to be feeling good about this with what we've seen reported so far.
Yeah, the numbers have gone as high as 99% reported, and it is, as of right now, it looks like Andy Beshear is going to be your governor-elect. Now we'll wait for the official call, and of course this is not a candidacy that I would expect a telephone call from Governor Bevin to Andy Beshear's camp, conceding the race at this point. we can look at the numbers and what's being reported, but I don't think that we're going to see anything conceded until probably a recount is transpired probably in the next few weeks.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. And the fact that, like we said, Bashir's going to walk into a government that we're looking at, even from the election results tonight, that is going to be heavily on the opposition party's side, right? So Bevin's still going to have friends in that government, and he's going to maybe look to them and saying, where do we need to recount? Is it plausible to do a recount or anything like that? In Kentucky, 10,000 votes may be enough for him to call for it. He may just call it go. We're going to have to see what's going to happen there. I'm not sure. His personality is one that is hard to predict sometimes.
This is so true, as we all in this education business know all too well. When we look at the selection that Andy Beshear made for his running mate, an educator, and especially looking at the numbers that he took in Jefferson County, where Governor Bevin basically he waged a war against Jefferson County public school systems. You look at Fayette County school systems and what he did there. Those two cities, or counties I should say, the numbers are almost 2-1 in favor of Andy Beshear's and compared to Governor Bevin. How much do you think that running mate of having an educator backing Andy Beshear really made a difference in those two locations?
I'm not sure, because if I look at 2015, Jack Conway is putting up a similar ratio. It's just that more people showed up this time, okay? So, Jacqueline Coleman may have had an impact in those areas. Certainly people were motivated to show up. And with the numbers that the candidates are getting, the voter turnout is up. It's hard to say what they were motivated by. Maybe we could see some exit polls, but certainly we know that the teaching profession was motivated to show up for sure to vote. But they do come from a demographic that tends to vote regularly anyway. So teachers generally vote. The educated folks, if you have a college degree, you're likely to vote, right? This is something we know demographic-wise. So they probably showed up and voted for Jack Conway. It's just, was that message able to be spread to the other parts of the population? Were they able to get on board and say, hey, I don't like what I saw there, I'm voting with you guys? And I think that's why the KY United 120 campaign, why you use social media for those type of things, because again, teachers generally vote. You've got to get other people to say, hey, this actually can interest you, that you should vote on these values as well. And I think that may have been the big thing, and Jacqueline Coleman was kind of playing into that, I would say, for sure.
How much do you think that the influx of new voters, 18 to 25-year-olds, because especially over the last few years where the education world has had the issues that it has seen with Governor Bevin, and you see a lot of those students that saw what was happening and felt those personal attacks on public education, now those are students that are registered voters and have that opportunity to vote. How much do we see that influx of 18 to 25-year-olds that have gone to the polls this year and made the statement?
Yeah, I think it will make a difference, particularly in the areas where you were talking about earlier, Fayette County, Jefferson County, where Beshear needed to pick up more than Jack Conway got, because those areas are going to have more students who are going to be more likely to be directly engaged in the political process. They're in kind of those centers. There's more of them and all of that. They're going to be impacted by that. And they come from that political culture that Louisville and Lexington have, Frankfort obviously has, that kind of it seems to just engage the citizens a little bit more. So it wouldn't surprise me to find that young voter turnout was up in those areas. Obviously, voter turnout in general was up in those areas. So I imagine a lot of those are first-time voters who probably felt connected to that issue in the past year.
Now, on the flip side of that, if that's some of the influx that we see for the higher numbers of voters that have rolled out this election, if they go to the polls and they see that their votes matter, how much do we see that make a big difference when we roll to 2020 next year and we elect a new president?
Yeah, I think you could see an impact. I think it would be hard if you look at like the 2016, the heavy, kind of Trump swing. I don't see the state swinging for a Democratic candidate. The last Democrat to win the state of Kentucky was Bill Clinton in 1996. So I think we're far away from going back to that. If you look at the candidates the Democrats are running right now, of course we'd have to see who the nominee is, what their campaign would look like. But it's certainly something to look at. What's the new generation's politics going to look like? How do they view the world, their experiences? How's it going to impact their vote? And where are they going to end up in the state? We hear this a lot. Some of our students, they're moving around to these other areas, and is their politics going to be impacted by that? They're going to see things differently. differently. On the flip side, I do think looking at the Beshear race and the bigger picture, we do have to go back to the fact that Republicans won down the ticket elsewhere. So is this, as me and Mr. Smith were talking about a moment ago, is this just a rebuke of Matt Bevin, not an ideological shift in the state?
When you talk about that, you see almost a straight ticket across the state for Republicans, but you have an incumbent Democrat. What does that say about what the state is standing up and saying about its current governor, Matt Bevin?
I think it says a lot of interesting things. I think it says some personal things about him. I mean, personality-wise, it says things like, maybe we didn't like the way this man purported himself. We don't like the way that, even though, Republicans are getting out, Republican candidates are winning, they're saying this man doesn't represent the Kentucky Republican Party so much, right? Which is an interesting thing to consider there. As Republicans are, again, going heavy for Daniel Cameron, probably Democrats going for Daniel Cameron there, but then everyone kind of looking at Bevin and saying we're skeptical of this man.
What challenges does Andy Beshear face of going into a Republican House as a Democratic governor if he, as we see, looks like he's going to win tonight? But what challenges does he face, and how important is it that he tries to find alliances that he can form with those Republicans, if it's even possible?
Well, it's going to be essential. It's going to be all about tone. If Andy Beshear carries this through, he turns around tomorrow, what is his victory speech going to look like? Is he talking about, we, ousted Bevin, we did this, strong political statement? Or is he going to be more of a congenial tone, saying, the race was tough, we're going to move together as Kentuckians? And that's going to be his offering to Republicans in the House and the Senate, to Robert Stivers, who's the Senate president. What is he going to say to them indirectly through his speech? Is he going to say, look, I'm here to work with everyone in government? Or is he going to maybe set a tone of antagonism where he's saying, I'm going to fight you for what I ran on, regardless of what you think? So depending on what that tone looks like, depends on what's going to happen. Because if he sets a congenial tone and he works with that legislator, I think they can get some things done. If he's going to, take the antagonist, which would surprise me if he did, because I think that's one of the things that made that he was able to run against Bevin on, was that Bevin was just antagonistic.
How much having Rocky Adkins in his back pocket as a very vocal speaker for Andy Beshear, how much do you think that has helped him, at the same time helps him moving forward?
I think Rocky Adkins is such an interesting figure in this state. I mean, you go east of Lexington, and Rocky Adkins is loved on both sides of the aisle. I know Republicans and Democrats, and they all speak generally fondly of, at the least, the way Rocky Adkins purports himself and carries himself as a Kentuckian. I think it made a definite difference. I know a lot of people who are in the Democratic Party who would just vote for whoever the candidate was going to be, but I know some who were going for Rocky and then were like, well, I'm not so interested anymore. And Rocky coming out, hard to say the impact it would have directly, but Rocky Adkins is a figure that if you're a Democrat in Kentucky, you have to have on your side. I do believe that true.
Well, we're going to take a break. We are getting uber close to this thing going, and the one thing I want to make certain, I don't want to steal the spotlight from my students, so I want to make certain Haley Howard, who's done a fabulous job tonight anchoring, she's nervous as can be. You scared her earlier, which was so funny, by the way, but I want to make certain that if this thing goes final, she's going to have the opportunity to make that final call. We're going to bring Mr. Jason Smith back in with her. They're going to talk about a very interesting thing that occurred last evening, a Trump rally in Lexington at Rupp Arena. It was Donald Trump, our president, really supporting Matt Bevin. And on the backside of things, Lexington spoke very loudly against Matt Bevin. They're going to talk about that, and hopefully we will bring you a final in the Kentucky governor's race with 99% of the precincts reporting with Andy Beshear currently in the lead. That's when we return as we continue our 2019 election coverage here on GCHS-TV in just a few moments.
welcome back. Breaking news. Outlets have reported Andy Beshear has defeated Governor Matt Bevin in the 2019 government race. Along with tonight's race, it seems that the Trump rally held in Lexington last night was no help for Bevin. These two have ran side by side through the 2019 election for Kentucky's governor. What does this say for Bevin? Would he have been better off to ride solo throughout his campaign?
Well, it was a well-attended rally from the different things that I have seen last night. What you cannot predict about that rally is where people might have traveled from. You look at the election results from Fayette County and the Lexington area, and they were very, very sided on Andy Beshear's side. So, you know, the rally, while it was well attended and seemed to go over well with the Republican base, did not have much of an impact on the election tonight.
Have we got any other numbers?
Well, I think what we've seen, Haley, is if you look at what's happening in the state of Kentucky and the fact, as we have talked throughout the evening, we have flipped the governor's seat. And the first thing I think that we need to maybe discuss is that we have not reelected a Republican governor. I don't think ever. Mr. Booz may correct me if I'm wrong. I think throughout our history we've had, 6 maybe Republican governors in the last 100 years or so, and they've always been one term. Now, the rules changed a little bit with electing governors over the last few decades. We now give governors the opportunity to run for re-election, but we have not had back-to-back Republican governors in a very, very long time. So you look at what's transpired with Matt Bevin and how he did align himself with Donald Trump. The president did visit Lexington last night. There was a huge rally, well attended. The Republican base was fired up, and as I said earlier, we can't predict where those folks came from. Those just weren't Lexington folks. They may have traveled from different parts across the state to attend that rally. So Governor Bevin and his pro-business policies aligned very well with President Trump. But as we have said, it has not affected the race a whole lot. It will be interesting to see moving forward how the national elections take place next year. Andy Beshear won some counties tonight. I saw a tweet earlier. President Donald Trump carried Knott County in the 2016 election, and by a more than 2-to-1 margin, Knott County voted for Andy Beshear tonight. So that's huge. It says a lot about Matt Bevin. It says a lot about the policies and things that he sought to implement over the last 4 years.
How do you think Andy Beshear is going to stand next year?
Well, he's got some things to figure out. Obviously, as we've talked about throughout this evening, is the fact that the state legislature is very heavily Republican. Andy Beshear is going to have to figure out how to get those folks at the table, to have conversations, how to compromise, or how they might compromise. That's the only way that he's going to be able to effectively implement his agenda. Mr. Booz and I were talking while we were off air just a few minutes ago. With such a strong majority Republican in both houses in the state legislature, they could potentially sit back and say, hey, we don't want to work with this guy. Any legislation that he may veto that we pass, we can override his veto with a simple majority vote. So, it's the tone of how Andy Beshear proceeds is going to determine how successful of a governor he is. If he reaches across the aisle to the Republicans, if he seeks to involve them in the legislative agenda this coming winter, we may be able to work together. if we proceed like this campaign has gone with some very harsh rhetoric, the Republicans again may sit back and say that's okay. We'll just override all his vetoes. So we'll see how it plays out.
What were your predictions coming into tonight? Like, I think most of the people from the Commonwealth never thought that Beshear would win.
I tend to agree, and a lot of that is based on historical, when you take a look at the history of elections.
Right.
Kentucky has been a conservative state for the last several decades, and Matt Bevin is a conservative, very right-wing Republican. The economy seems to be doing well. If you don't want to make that statement, at least it is improving. Mm-hmm. So if we look at the outcome tonight, my guess is, or at least my opinion, I'm a little bit surprised. I thought Matt Bevin would win. It would be a close election, but we actually got the opposite. We got Andy Beshear winning the governor's race, but we still got a close election. So again, I think Jefferson County and the turnout in Jefferson County is the determining factor.
Jefferson was our determining factor for this year's election?
I don't think that there's any doubt about that. Mr. Booz alluded to it earlier. It looks like that they had very close to 300,000 people voting in that county alone.
Right.
That's a lot of folks that have
contributing to the Commonwealth.
Yeah, a lot of folks that went out in Jefferson County and voted, and 186,000 of them voted for Andy Beshear.
Mm-hmm. Well, what other counties had a majority percentage tonight?
And it's again things that we've talked about. What helped Andy Beshear was Louisville, was Lexington, and a few counties surrounding Lexington. In my opinion, looking at this map, the fact that he got some eastern Kentucky counties that we see over here in our neck of the woods, and then in far eastern Kentucky flipping to Andy Beshear, also had a contributing factor. Those were counties, as we mentioned earlier. Knott County voted for Donald Trump at a 4-1 measure, and tonight Andy Beshear, the Democrat, won that county. So those counties flipping, Fayette, Jefferson, decided this race.
And there you have it for tonight's election of 2019 governor's race. Here we are to a break on GCHS-TV.
back into the GCHS-TV 2019 election coverage. James Collier joined here with Principal Jason Smith, Eric Booz, and Haley Howard. And guys, as we, just on the other side of things, we announced that the governor contest has been named. Andy Beshear has defeated the incumbent, or the governor as Matt Bevin. It's one of those things that, yeah, we got some blue screen going on here with Booz. Maybe it's some Booz. You got a little bit of electricity going through that jacket. Maybe
It's very strong energy.
It's very
coming
strong
through.
energy. But shocking news though, or kind of where we thought it was going to go.
I think it was close. You know, I thought it was going to be close, but Matt Bevin would win. I was just giving him the nod on incumbency, but I'm not surprised by the result. In all seriousness,
Mr. Smith.
Agreed. I felt the same way. I thought it would be a close race within a couple percentage points or so, and that's what it looked like it turned out to be. And different outcome than what I anticipated, but again, as we said earlier, I think it is an anti-Matt Bevin outcome that we saw tonight.
And again, the difference is right now right at between 5,000 to 6,000 votes. Will you be shocked if we do not see a call for a recount?
I will be shocked if we don't see one, yes.
Mr. Booz, same thing for you. Do you think that they say, well, there's really not enough votes out there to get it is what it is?
I'm not sure. I really can't tell you. I could see them just kind of letting this one lie, but I could also see a recount. It really depends on what we start to hear. Maybe in the next 12 hours we hear maybe this district had this issue. Sometimes you hear this, oh, a precinct closed early or something. If any irregularity pops up, for sure, but I can't say yet. I'm not sure.
Well, gentlemen, thank you all so much for joining us here tonight. Your wealth of knowledge was very welcome to our broadcast, and we greatly appreciate you all taking the time out of your busy evenings to come in and help us with our first ever live broadcast. Mm-hmm. We'll let you two step out. I'm going to bring Haley back in. I got to give some love to the crew here tonight. First off, nothing happens without the people that makes these cameras work. And Maddie Wolf was rolling around behind the cameras tonight, so Maddie did a fabulous job. Zane Bauer, he was out and about at the courthouse. He did that and then rolled back in, so great job by him this evening. On the graphics, taking care of all the maps that you were seeing this evening, that was Ashton Lacey. Why did I forget your last name? That's awful. Ashton Lacey. Great job. Again, he was getting those maps that you were seeing pop up on the screen, doing those in real time. So fabulous job. Behind the scenes, Nicholas Collier, I called him. I said, I need you. I need some help here. He's got to help me out to take care of all the executive production and stuff. And Haley Howard, she just returned back from, where were you?
KYA.
She was
Kentucky
at KYA.
Youth Assembly.
So the Youth Assembly, so doing some good there for the betterment of the Kentucky Youth Assembly.
Serving in the Commonwealth.
There you go, serving the Commonwealth, and then rolling back in here. You rolled in here about 6 o'clock this evening, wasn't it? And so she got to anchor her first ever live broadcast, and more importantly, you get to make your first official call of the governor that is now being elected, as we've made the call, as Andy Beshear. You said you were nervous. Are you still nervous tonight?
A little bit.
Just a little bit. I think this is the quietest I've ever seen her.
This is the first time, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But a big thank you to you. A fabulous job that you did as well, and great things are to come for every single one of you guys on the crew. Kudos to each and every one of you all.
Thank you.
That'll do it for the crew here tonight. I'm going to step aside and let Haley take it away, and she'll close us out for our first ever live broadcast here on GCHS-TV.
That's all we have for the coverage, and thank you for watching GCHS-TV for tonight's 2019 election of governor.